Good afternoon, this is David O. Thank you for joining me again on this beautiful Tuesday. Some nice weather today. Well, we have got a great show for you. We're going to talk to Janet Mintzer, the president and CEO of the Pearl S. Buck International organization. It's a nonprofit right here in this area. And then we're going to hear from two judges, Judge Gwendolyn Bright and Judge Karen Shreeves-Johns, and they're going to talk to us about the Judicial Ambassadors Program. Yes, you can have judges come out to you and explain our judicial system. That is actually very helpful, and I hope you'll hear about their program. It's free, and we'll also be talking to Emmanuel Bussie. He's a different kind of Democrat, and I'm putting that in quotes, different kind of Democrat. Hey, I'm a Republican, so why are we having Emmanuel on? Well, listen, there has been expressed dissatisfaction with the Republican Party, with the Democratic Party. I'm not saying it's worthy or not. What I'm saying is people are registering independent and people are expressing themselves as to what they expect of their political parties. Perhaps you've got some complaints too. Well, he represents a movement called Different Kind of Democrat right here in the Philadelphia region. Let me first start by thanking our sponsor, that is Weinerman Pain and Wellness, the wonderful work that they do. Very supportive. I had an event myself just recently, the Green Beret fundraiser we did here in Philadelphia. They supported that, as they have supported other events and nonprofit type things that we do in our, me as a councilman in our community. But mainly, they do wonderful work in rehabilitating folks from their physical injuries, and oftentimes with that their emotional and mental challenges of getting back to a full life, as full as possible. If you remember, last week we were talking to Juman Kim. Yeah, he's a PhD candidate at University of Pennsylvania, but he was basically an assistant professor at the Korea Air Force Academy, and we were talking about North Korea. What is going on in North Korea? And what kind of threat is it, and how serious of a threat is it? And so Juman Kim was our guest, and then we spoke to Rodney Little, and they were talking about the Kingdom's Men's Conference that was a kind of an anti-crime summit. And I bring it up because you can hear these shows and others at www.wwdbam.com, or if you want to see what our guests look like, you can see a video of them. And I got to say, I'm not sure if all the videos are up right on time, but they will be. That's at my YouTube page, which is youtube.com, and then just punch in the know with David O. Well, listen, my first guest is Janet Mintzer, and she belongs to a wonderful organization, the Pearl S. Buck. I call it the Pearl S. Buck Foundation. It's Pearl S. Buck International, but let me say why I do that. Because when I was a teenager, there was one of our church members, and she was an adopted daughter of Pearl Buck, the famous author and international humanitarian. And I actually went out to the Pearl Buck home. And so for a long time I've known about Pearl Buck, but I really am not sure what they've been up to lately, unless I talk to Janet Mintzer, and she joined us right now. Welcome to the show, Janet.
Nice to be here. Thanks, David.
All right. So correct everything I said that was wrong.
No, everything you said was right. We are Pearl S. Buck Foundation around the world, where we work in 5 Asian countries. They use the name Pearl S. Buck Foundation. But in the United States, we changed our name in 1999 to Pearl S. Buck International.
Okay, and for those who may be saying to themselves, Pearl Buck, that sounds familiar, why should they know who Pearl Buck is?
Well, Pearl Buck was a famous author,
yes.
number one, the first woman to win both the Pulitzer and Nobel Prizes in literature.
Wow. And what's one of her famous books that people...
The Good Earth.
The
Most
Good
people
Earth.
have read The Good Earth.
Or seen the movie,
or
right?
should read The Good Earth.
Yes, you should read The Good Earth. Great book.
And then after Pearl Buck became known for her writing, she used that platform to become an activist because she lived in China the first 40 years of her life as a minority.
Yeah, let's let people wrap their heads around this. So here she is, Pearl Buck. She was born and raised in China.
White girl, blonde hair, blue eyes, used to hide her blonde hair under cap, so she didn't look so
Right.
suspicious in a sea of brown-haired people.
Right.
So when she came to the United States to live in 1934 at the age of 40 years old, and there was such socially acceptable racism in the United States,
Yes.
she became an activist. An activist for civil rights, for human rights. She became an activist for women's rights, for the disabled rights. She was quite a woman,
Right.
and she had the power of a pen, and she told many stories, wrote many speeches. She actually served on the board of Howard University,
Wow.
was a lifetime member of the NAACP
Oh, my
in the
goodness.
late 1930s.
Wow, that's pretty advanced, huh?
Yes, and she gave a beautiful commencement speech to Howard University. She said, it's the first speech that I'll ever give of all the ones I've been invited to give, because she had a message. She had a message for the, quote, colored Americans, now people of color that lived
Yes.
in the United States.
Mhm.
And so a lot of her activism focused on fighting discrimination. And it manifested itself in the third part of who she was the humanitarian that you mentioned.
Yes.
She established the first adoption agency in the United States back in 1949, which focused on the adoption of biracial children in our country at a time when they were considered totally unadoptable and would live their lives in an orphanage.
Right.
Well, when she realized just because of the color of their skin, they're not adoptable, so she started Welcome House. A lot of people in our region know of Welcome House or know
Yes.
of children adopted through Welcome House. And we did adoption for a long time, continuing her legacy up until 2014. And then, after the Korean War,
Yes.
a lot of children were being born of American servicemen who were literally treated like less than dogs in Korea because they were not considered Korean citizens. They didn't have a Korean father. They weren't considered American citizens because they weren't born on our soil. And oftentimes their mothers couldn't afford to raise them and they would just be abandoned on the street. And so when Pearl Buck found out about these children, she originally started bringing them back for adoption.
Right.
But then she realized that there were some mothers that would not give their children up for adoption no matter what. And those children could not register for school because they weren't citizens. They couldn't receive an education. So she started the Pearl Buck Foundation in 1964. And in her founding statement, she said, I'm founding this organization to help children who face discrimination because of the circumstances of their birth in their countries, and our first project will be the Amerasians. And so that's when she went to Korea. She started actually it was called the Opportunity Center. It was a place where the children could live, get their education, get good nutrition, good health care, and have a better start in life that they just would have been impossible without the program. And then she followed American servicemen around Asian countries. We continue to work in all of those countries to date: Vietnam, Thailand, Philippines, Taiwan. But we continue to focus on children who face discrimination. But as you know, there are not the numbers of Amerasian children anymore. So we have different populations in each country depending on what the needs of that country may be.
Right.
So for example, in Korea, we focus on children who are immigrant children who come to Korea as a laborer, end up marrying a Korean man or woman, and then still face some discrimination because they're not, full-blooded Korean.
Right.
In Vietnam, we serve orphans. In Thailand, we serve ethnic minorities. Philippines, ethnic minorities, that kind of thing.
Right.
But on this side of the globe, after Pearl Buck passed away in 1973, we continued to do the part of Pearl Buck that was about bridging the cultures.
Yes.
Helping people have an appreciation for differences, to value people of color, to value other cultures. And so today we do a lot of work that focuses on building the intercultural competence of people. We do programming for schools, corporations. We have a whole program to help make workplaces appreciate diversity. We also have programs for young people, like our high school leadership program, where we help them, give them exposure to overseas. They can see where we work, develop a service project to meet a need. We have public programs where we talk about issues like what it means to be an American today, or race in America, which we did last year at the African American Museum here in Philadelphia. So our real true mission today is to help build an appreciation for diversity,
Yes.
for differences here in the United States, and we do it through international travel programs. We continue our child sponsorship program, working in 6 countries in Asia, because we started working in China in 2002. And we have a real relevancy, I think, especially with everything that's going on in our country today, to really be part of the conversation and to really make a difference so that our country can look back on the words of Pearl Buck spoken a long time ago, which are still so relevant today.
Yeah, you know, it's really heartwarming and very moving to hear the story of this woman, this little girl who was raised in China and tried to fit in, and after 40 years came to the United States and saw discrimination. And basically, having grown up with a group of people, the good and bad experiences, she just thought to herself, this is not fair, this is not right. And it's really a lack of understanding that colors people's views, to see demons and shadows and to blame others where blame is not supposed to be. And so she wanted to create a circumstance where people would be treated fairly, beginning with being treated compassionately. And so at a time where people would have just kind of not wanted a child for being biracial, she reached out and provided them the love and care that was denied to them through no fault of their own, and built an entire movement and foundation and effort around it. So really, by the way, speaks wonderfully of America. You know, she doing that, whether she intended to or not. I'm sure her actions really endeared many people to say, what a wonderful country, because look at that person. And her work with Howard University and doing all those things that she did speaks so well, as you said, in this time of day, because we're really talking about, at least in our country, Americans and how we treat each other as citizens, and then how we treat our visitors and guests, how we treat them reflects on who we are. And so this is really, really wonderful work. How do people learn more about the Pearl S. Buck International and the Pearl Buck Foundation? How do they get involved?
Well, I hope everyone will go to our website right now at www.pearlsbuck.org, or psbi.org works too.
Right.
Because our website really does give you a nice overview of our programs, our calendar of events, the kinds of programs that we do that focus on diversity and cross-cultural appreciation. And also, we are a National Historic Landmark home. We actually stay in Pearl Buck's home on her 67-acre farm.
I've been there.
Yes, it's a beautiful place. Her home was an old Bucks County stone farmhouse. It's standing to this day. It's been preserved. We had a $2 million preservation campaign probably about 5 years ago now, so it looks pristine. It's beautiful, lovely gardens. And so we're open daily for tours, so visitors can come three times a day for guided tours, twice on Sunday, 7 days a week, and you can learn about her story, and you can see more about our programs when you come. We're about 7 miles outside of Doylestown, Bucks County. So on a fall day, I can think of no better place to go but go for a drive out in Bucks County, look at the beautiful scenery, the color, and then stumble upon Pearl Buck's house, and you'll see her gravesite there. You'll see her old barn, which is now our cultural center. We have a lovely visitor center. Right now we have an exhibit on Amerasian children living in Philippines. It's a photographic exhibit. It's very moving. And so we're trying to tell the story about discrimination in a number of ways, but not just tell the story, but then do something about it in a proactive way by working with students, by school administrators, corporate leaders, so that we're all embracing differences. I mean, becoming interculturally competent is really a lifelong process.
Yes.
So the more we read, we learn, we do, we discover more about ourselves and more about others. And I think if we each can invest a little time in going on that journey, we can make this world, our city, our region a better place to live.
Yeah, I sure think so. And by the way, for those listening, it's always interesting because you can talk about any group of people, and there's something where that group of people have been blamed for something they didn't do. Or they're not responsible for. I was talking to one of my colleagues, Councilman Squill, and he was telling me like he was going to show me the ordinance in Philadelphia where the city had an ordinance that if you were Italian, you could not work on city projects. That was back in what type of day? And of course, Irish need not apply and before. So we could just keep going back about prejudices that people have. And when they have prejudices, they justify it. Oh, it's because of this. They start believing these different facts that are not true. And so, it's interesting because today, nobody has any animosity towards biracial kids. But back in those days, yeah, they couldn't go to school, they couldn't, have a home. People were ashamed to have them in their family, and how things have changed. But yeah, the work goes on, and this is the type of thing that you can go to the Pearl S. Buck home and actually get a sense of who this amazing woman was. As I recall, and I don't know, but I think they had like a little library or study or something. I remember this beautiful chess set was there. And in fact, that was back in the 70s, and we were talking.
You remember well.
Yeah,
it's still there.
Listen, I was impressed. That was the first mansion I was ever in, and I got pushed into the swimming pool. And you're telling me the swimming pool doesn't exist anymore, but
it's been filled in now.
Yes, Julie pushed me in the pool, by the way.
It's such a beautiful property that we have a large number of weddings.
Oh, is that right?
On the property every year. And her built-in swimming pool was filled in, and that's the place where many of the wedding ceremonies take place.
Oh, yeah. It's safer without the pool, but that was a beautiful pool. And I'm joking because Julie was one of the adopted daughters.
Julie Henning.
Yes, and you told me she's a teacher. Or
she's a retired teacher now.
Hey, Julie, you pushed me in the pool. I couldn't swim.
I'm going to have her listen to this.
I was going to have her come up here, but she escaped. But anyway.
Well, she would love to come here and tell the story because she's a wonderful.
She is.
She's so deeply indebted to Pearl Buck for her life that she found here in the United States, and she really sees talking about her childhood in Korea and her life here in the United States as her ministry, and she would love to be here, I'm sure of it.
Yes, well, we'll bring her on one day, and but I thank you for coming. Now, what's going on right now with Pearl Buck? Okay, if you guys want to, our listeners, who want to go out and visit the Pearl Buck home, listen, it's a beautiful home, and I think there's something magical and very special about going to someone's home. We have Marian Anderson, one of her homes here. I've been in that home, and I can tell you I'm a huge fan of Marian Anderson. My family had some interaction with her, and when we talk about Pearl S. Buck, Pearl Buck, just to be in her home and see the different things she had around her, and then you wonder, how did this woman, how was she so ahead of her time with compassion and just out of the box thinking, and in taking the action she did to turn her feelings into, making the world better.
Yes, I used to say Pearl Buck is a woman ahead of her times, but of lately I've been saying Pearl Buck is a woman ahead of our times.
Yes, wow. So for those who want to go visit,
please come. We'd love to have you during the fall on November 12th. The house is transformed and reopens as a holiday center. We call it our Festival of Trees. You can see the home decorated by area decorators and community groups, businesses. We have a jewelry craft show that opens Black Friday. It's a 10-day spectacular show, the best in Bucks County, and I hope you'll all come and just experience and maybe you'll capture a little bit of her passion and a little bit of her humanitarianism and make our area a better place.
And I have to ask this, for those who are listening and say, hey, this is a beautiful story and great work, how do they financially support the Pearl aspect?
Well, I'm glad you asked, because
Yes.
when people roll down our driveway, this serene feeling comes over, the lovely gardens, and everyone thinks we must be the richest nonprofit in Bucks County.
Yes.
But the truth of the matter is, Pearl Buck left her home, but not a penny
Oh,
to support it.
yes.
So we do not have an endowment.
Right.
90% of our money comes from grants and donations at this point, 10% from the fees to come into the house and the
Right,
gift shop sales and
right.
earned revenue, that type of thing. So we are really dependent on the community for our survival.
Can I make a donation on a website?
You
or-
can make a donation on our
Okay.
website, go to pearlsbuck.org.
Yeah, listen, this woman, All right, and we are back. We were talking to Janet Mintzer. She's the president and CEO of Pearl S. Buck International. Wonderful work. Just following the legacy of a compassionate, a just and fair woman, famous author, Pearl Buck. It's an incredible story, really, having been born and raised in China until the age of 40. When she comes to the United States, she's no longer a minority. And her experiences, she just saw people being treated so poorly through no fault of their own, and she did all this compassionate work and such work with children who, through no participation of their part, were just born biracial and really discriminated against, and she did a wonderful job. So, keep Pearl Buck in mind. And speaking of which, we have a couple of guests here, and they're pretty much kind of in the same line of work. When things happen that are unfair or not right, listen, sometimes the only thing you can do is go to court. And the court will be that impartial to the best of their ability, non-political to the best of their ability, right? Arbitrator of the law, and to make sure that things are done, fairly and justly for everybody. And, that is a wonderful thing, our third branch of government, and yet so many people are afraid of the court. It holds such power, and then there's somebody in a black robe. Yikes, right? But the court knows that, and we are in a democracy, and you shouldn't be afraid of the court. You should use the court. You got to comply. Listen, don't give anybody a hard time here. But the court has a wonderful program, the Judicial Ambassador Program. It's part of their community outreach, and we have joining us here today two judges that basically co-chair this effort. We have Judge Gwendolyn Bright and Judge Karen Shreeves-Johns, both from the 1st Judicial District of Pennsylvania. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
All right, good afternoon. So for our listeners, basically, could you tell us, how did this Judicial Ambassador Program come about, and what are your goals?
Well, the Board of Judges of Philadelphia's 1st Judicial District, which is headed by the President Judge Shillerwood Skipper, felt that there was a need for a community communications and community affairs committee that come under the Board of Judges. And within that spectrum, she felt that we needed to have more transparency. And in order to do so, ergo judicial ambassadors, so that we could have an extension of ourselves out into the community.
And what we're really talking about is the fact, when you say judicial ambassadors, you're talking about judges who voluntarily go out into the community to say hello to folks, answer questions, explain things about the judicial process.
That is absolutely correct.
Well, judges have pretty, tough jobs. Do you find many judges willing to go out there and do that?
We have many of our judges, they're already independently reaching out to the public.
Yes.
But this is kind of like a program that was designed to kind of get a more of a cohesiveness, a coordinated effort to get the judges all involved of the different branches. Because we have 3 basic courts. We have the trial courts, which are the civil courts and the criminal courts. We have family courts, and we have the offense courts. And judges are available from all those various courts to go out to the community upon request
Yes.
to speak on educational issues, to
Right.
inform the public, so that we don't have that TV mentality of what court is about.
Right, right. And Judge Bright, you preside over domestic violence and sexual assault cases. Is that currently the case? Because I know judges
Yes,
switch roles.
That's my current assignment.
Okay.
And, but piggybacking on the point that Judge Shreeves-Johns was making, that we have a diverse bench, and it's our goal to go out to all the communities of the city and to educate about the court system. We've so far had a lot of success in schools, dealing with the school children. We would like to expand into the other communities and organizations in the city, such as churches, senior citizen homes,
Right.
things of that nature, to basically demystify the court in the process.
Yes.
And also to encourage civic duty, such as jury duty.
That's got to be a big one. I'm sorry for interrupting, but jury duty. People hear jury duty right away. They think, how can I get out of this?
Well, I handle mostly jury. I see someone shaking their head. I handle mostly jury trials, and
Yes.
but what's interesting is that folks do step up to the plate. I hear a lot of nonsense excuses.
Yes.
People who don't want to serve, but ultimately, once people are seated and served, they appreciate the process and the
Yes.
importance of the process,
Mhm.
and mostly have a good experience and a rewarding experience doing it.
Yeah, while I have limited experience of being an attorney as compared to a judge who does this all day long, I have found myself very impressed with the jury, that at the end of the day, even if they didn't go quite the way I wanted to, I wanted them to go. After I'd been upset, I thought about it and said, they got it pretty right. It's pretty amazing that in at least my experience, the jury gets it pretty right.
Well, it's a sobering process. I had an interesting experience a couple of weeks ago. Actually, two jurors, the jurors on a particular case delivered their verdict, and two of the ladies wanted to stay and see jury selection in the next case. So they stayed and went through that experience, and really, they want to become ambassadors for jury duty.
Right. It is. That's fantastic.
We have another aspect of our efforts to deal with the community in a more positive fashion with jury duty. We have what's referred to as jury welcomes. So when a day comes for jurors to impanel, judges are selected on a schedule. We go out down to the jury room and we do a welcome, hopefully to encourage those members of the society that have been pulled in for jury duty to willingly participate in the process.
Could I ask you, does the speech go like, I'm Judge Shreeves-Johns, I know what you're thinking, don't you try it? Or what do you say when you get in front of these prospective jurors?
Since the purpose is to encourage them.
Yes.
I come more from an angle of telling them that I'm not trying to tell them more about we have the best system in the world. I want to bring it more closer to them.
Yes.
So I tell them more of concept of 6 degrees of separation, and I tell them that somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody who knows somebody that's either a plaintiff or a defendant, and those are the individuals that want you to serve.
Yes. Well,
So-
that's a very good way of letting people know people are counting on them to use their best judgment, to be fair and impartial, and to follow the instructions of the judge.
So that being another aspect of the ambassador mentality, we have this program because we want more people to seek our services, and they can do that by emailing. We have a process where they would email us so that we can make a determination as to whether or not it's an activity that we can participate in.
Yes, because judges are limited. They just can't go out everywhere, and it's certainly nobody wants to violate an appearance of,
And propriety.
being got to be fair and impartial. Where do people go in terms of on the internet or telephone? How do they reach this program to say, hey, we'd like to have a judge come out to talk to us?
Actually, the Philadelphia Courts has a website,
Mhm.
and then there's the First Judicial District of Pennsylvania as part of that website. So you just go to that website, and then there's a click off, excuse me, Judicial Community Outreach. You click that,
Yes.
and then that'll take you to the Judicial Ambassador Program. The form is right online. You can fill it out online.
Mhm.
We ask that you give about at least 45 days notice if you want us to come out to speak to your group, and we'll respond within 14 days as to whether or not someone's available or if it's an appropriate request.
Right, so,
Yeah.
so listen, if you want a judge to come out to speak to your group, your school, your college, whomever, understand that judges are, they have a big caseload. Oftentimes you hear about the backload of cases, and so they won't come out right the next day. So, give it some time, 60 days, 90 days, send your request and then give them time to get back to you. And again, you can Google it probably, but I do have a email here. It's community.outreach@courts.phila.gov. I'm going to say that one more time because there's a lot of dots in words. It's community.outreach@courts.phila.gov. All right, and could I ask you, what has been some of, give me, a memorable, a great place that you went, that you just said, wow, this is really a fun, great event I'm doing?
Actually, I went to the schools. I went to Hartnath School in North Philly for, they call it brunch with the sisters or something like that.
Okay.
And there were a group of individuals from diverse occupations and backgrounds, and we spoke to a group of these seniors. And that was very rewarding. But out of that, I was invited back as the 8th grade graduation speaker.
Oh, wow.
And that was awesome.
Yeah, boy, that must have been a lot of fun.
Another one, the two of us went to the school. They were reading a book, and
Yeah, yes.
they were reading a book, and the book was about a young man in the who got caught up in the juvenile system. And they asked us to come and speak to him about the difference between the adult and the juvenile system in terms of being involved in the process of our judicial system.
Yes, yes. And so what would you tell the listeners right now about, how to, something that about the, kind of misperceptions about the court?
I think that one of the best things that can happen about having judges come out is to see the human element. Like you said, there's such a frightening concept about us as judges, but there's also the human element.
Right.
There's the concern for people.
Right.
And that's why we like to reach out so that you can take some of the fear away and have honest discourse.
Yes.
Some of the other issues that I think the whole idea of the program is it grants a little more transparency,
Yes.
takes the TV off concept of court away, and understand that it's a real process. And that's another reason to backtrack as to why jury duty is such a good thing to be involved in, because you get an inside view of what the process is like,
Right.
as opposed to an armchair theorist
Right.
type.
And also through the program, even though we're the ambassadors, there are a number of other programs that the courts have to facilitate and help people, such as in terms of the criminal justice system. There are a number of programs for diversion, for reentry, things that the judges are participate in on the human level to try to help people. So it also is an outreach to all the other things that the court is helpful with in terms of the community.
We have a mental health program as well, which our president judge presides over, Shreeves-Johns Skipper.
Right, right. And so for those listening, the judges that make up our court system do more in terms of trying to reach out to the citizens, to you, but also to provide opportunities where people can avoid unnecessary process when perhaps they could go through a diversion court, which means if you have a mental health issue, if there are some circumstances of drug addiction. I know we have a wonderful veterans court for those who have done nonviolent crimes and can be called upon to recall their service to our nation. And so these are efforts to try to bring justice without punishment that is unnecessary, so people can get back into being a productive and fruitful citizen.
Exactly.
Okay, wonderful. Well, listen, we have just another minute left. Is there anything you'd like to tell our listeners about your program and about the courts?
Well, please use us. There are judges who are willing and able. They love to come out into the community and speak to you, to share what the courts are about, to help educate. And we get a lot out of it too. It's not just, we enjoy being with the people, hearing the stories, hearing what's of interest to them, particularly the children.
Yes.
And as we said earlier, that's a very rewarding experience. But we would like to outreach into some other areas of the community as well.
Okay.
I think that the community should be mindful, however, as we mentioned, there are some restrictions. So we can't be part of any type of fundraising or promotional activities or endorse any political parties or anything of that sort. So we are there for educational purposes only, and there are some restrictions on the activity that we can participate in because we are judges.
Yes, and the public appreciates those restrictions. And so for all those who want a judge to come out, listen, make your application. The judges will come out, provided that, it is the proper type of thing that they can participate in, and they will gladly come out and help educate folks and share with them.
I just wanted to share that we do have a nice brochure about
Yes.
the program. You can go online and download it, I believe. So it's also available in some of the courtrooms and in some of the city council offices.
Yes, and you can find it at www.courts, with an S, courts.phila.gov / there's a backslash, JCO. And there is a form so you can make your application. Well, judges, thank you very much for joining us and sharing your time with our listeners. We look forward to you coming back on the show someday.
Thank you for having us.
All right. Well, stay tuned because we're going to learn about a different kind of Democrat. Maybe we'll learn about a different kind of Republican someday, but today you're going to learn about a different kind of Democrat right after this commercial break. We are back. We were just talking to a couple of our judges here in Philadelphia, the 1st Judicial District, Judge Gwendolyn Bright and Judge Karen Shreeves-Johns. And they were talking about the Judicial Ambassador Program. And if you want to have a judge come out, it's got to be educational. There's certainly restrictions, as you certainly, and I certainly want judges to have restrictions so that they're fair. But you can reach out to them by sending an email to community.outreach@courts.phila.gov. And if you want to see the form, you can download your request form and possibly mail it in or send it by email. Go to www.courts.phila.gov and /JCO. JCO stands for Judicial Community Outreach. Well, listen, we are joined by a gentleman. His name is Emmanuel Bussie, and he is the co-chair of Professionals for Progress. But in particular, he is involved with a movement. I don't know if I can call him the head of the movement, a spokesperson for the movement, but he certainly is very involved with this movement, and it's called Different Kind of Democrat. Now, look, for the listeners, I happen to be a Republican, but what I would say is that, listen, there certainly is in the news issues about dissatisfaction with political parties. We have the whole Bernie Sanders thing, you got the Donald Trump thing going on, and we had the Tea Party before that, and there's all kinds of things going on. And so the issue is, what are the issues about traditional parties or the establishment, or what is the challenge for parties in terms of what people think they should be doing, what they could be doing better? And so Philadelphia, which is pretty much 8-1 Democrat to Republican voter registration, is a Democratic city, and so Emmanuel Bussie's got a movement that he is a part of different kind of Democrat. He's wearing his red, white, and a blue button. It says different kind of Democrat. It's time. Emmanuel, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Brother David.
Okay, let me ask you this. What's it mean, different kind of Democrat?
So basically, the elevator pitch is that we're a different kind of Democrat. We're bold, aggressive, and progressive about getting things done. So that's the elevator pitch. That's what we tell everybody, bold and aggressive about getting things done. It kind of started based on the need to challenge the system. We think that we have systemic issues in our politics. We have systemic issues related to housing, discrimination. We have systemic issues. And this started by a bunch of us just willing to challenge the institution. We don't think that Philadelphia, as you said, being predominantly Democrat, is ready for a third party.
Right,
So since we wasn't ready for a third party, what we said is, okay, we want to challenge the parties that are in existence. This is not about a party. We say we're going to party after we get what we want.
Right.
So this is not, as you know, we supported you when you ran.
Yes,
So,
on the issues, right? On the issues.
and that's what it's all about. This is about policy. And we're going to start making our politics more about policy and less about personality. And I have a bunch of people that have joined this movement. So it all started with a group called Professionals for Progress. That was the group called Professionals for Progress. Professionals for Progress spun out of the Coalition of African American Organizations. A bunch of us, me, Sharif Street, now Judge Stephanie Sawyer, Sherry Cohen, Ivy State, and Isaiah Thomas. A bunch of us that had political aspirations that wanted to challenge the system said, we want to form our own little group. And we told the coalition, look, you guys move a little bit too slow for us, right? We're not going to start a new organization because we're good at starting things, but we're not too good at finishing them. So what we're going to do, you leave us alone, Coalition of African American Organizations. We'll go over here and form this little Professional for Progress with underneath the Coalition of African American Organizations and do our thing. And we're going to go shake things up. And that's what we're really about. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to focus more on policy and less on personality and shake things up. Shake things the heck up.
Right. Now let me ask you, what are some of the key issues or challenges that you're saying, hey, that's moving way too slow. We need to really deal with this today. What are some of the issues?
Number one, the main thing we're fighting on, and we've been fighting on since the fall, since the summer, is the lack of enforcement around laws and rules and policies that's already on the books. As you know, you introduced legislation to try to remedy that, and it's just been too long, over 80 decades, that we've not had real enforcement around the rules and policies that we already have. So one of the first things that we're going to do is try to do the best we can to drive the enforcement bill, the first phase of the enforcement bill. We think that's just a good start of enforcing policies around economic inclusion, around jobs and contracting. Just force the issue around enforcing the laws on the book. That's the first thing.
Okay, so for our listeners, what I'd say is, look, basically what Emmanuel was talking about is the fact that it is illegal and unconstitutional in our country to discriminate against another American or anyone based on their race, their gender, their religion, anything like that, because we're a country where we say we're all created equal, and we want to ensure that everyone has an opportunity on the merits. We're just talking about, laws in Philadelphia back in the day where if you were Italian, you couldn't work on a public job site, and that was an ordinance in Philadelphia. And there were many types of things like that that really cut against what America stands for. And so as we deal with those issues, we do have efforts to ensure that there is fairness on the merits, and sometimes, when there isn't, we need to enforce our laws that provide that every American will have an equal opportunity, and that's what Emmanuel's talking about. Let me ask you this, what's another issue?
The people keeping their word. If you make a promise to the citizens of Philadelphia, any citizens really, but especially to the citizens of Philadelphia, you keep your daggone word. Governor Wolf said he's going to return local control back to our school system. Right after we work on this enforcement bill, we're going to be all over that issue with Governor Wolf returning local control back to Philadelphia in terms of our school district. We have some issues. What we decided to do was partner with people that were in the community that were already doing the same kind of work. People like Rochelle Bilal, people like Greg Brinkley and Albert Littlebase and Mel Wells and Sister Talia and Pete down on 29th Street. What we said we want to do is take the group that we have, the organization that we have, the Marie Patterson, the Leah Scotts. We just take the people that we have now, combine that with local leadership throughout the cities, the Anton Moores. Just take everybody that's out there doing the work, all come together. We have one mantra, which is a commitment to cooperation. If you have a commitment to cooperation, you're a member of Professional Progress. You can be down with different kinds of Democrats. That's our only thing that we require, is that you have a commitment to cooperation, because we believe that if we are able to cooperate and collaborate at different levels, we can take on any challenge. And that's what really this was all about.
Who are some of the, or what are some of the organizations that are included in your group?
So again, we're more of the Professional Progress is the group, but the different kind of Democrat is the movement. There are a number of people that have joined the movement. I can go on, but you just think of every major community activist, and they're part of this movement. You talk about Albert Littlepage, Anton Moore, Shantae Love, Darisha Miller, Greg Brinkley. You just go down, Mel Wells.
Yeah, these names may not mean much to some of our listeners, because they, this radio station goes out far. But for a lot of Philadelphians, those names mean something, because those are people that do things, and whether you agree with them or not, you hear their name and they are active.
Yeah, one day at a time. People should have heard about one day.
Guardian City, yes, African American police officers, yeah.
So you can associate some of the people.
Yeah, and I guess my point is, this is not something like fly by night. I mean, you've got some pretty serious people, some serious organizations as part of this effort. What is it that, what is the need that different kind of Democrats is fulfilling right now?
Well, we want to be that group that actually get things done by, when necessary, punching people in the mouth.
And I'll interpret it this way, that basically politics, and listen, I love compromise. Like, we're a country of diverse people who have different opinions. We don't compromise in a good sense. We don't understand. We're each not going to have our own way. We're not going to get things done. But what you're talking about is when there's political compromise, not really about meeting of the minds and getting things done, but basically not offending people, being cautious politically to advance your career, those type of things. You're saying, hey, listen, that's got to take a back seat to getting things done.
Yeah, you kind of left me hanging out there with the punching in the mouth thing. You can't just leave it out there like that.
No, pick it up.
People think
Come on.
I'm about punching people because I'm from North Philly down 29th Street doesn't mean I'm all about punching people in the mouth.
Okay.
So this is
figuratively,
right.
Yes.
This is more so those people that want to drive good policy, which you want to. I remember, and we got this on a clip with 16-1. I mean, we had 16 other city council people said, I'm going to move in this direction. And David O saying, hey, I think we should move in this direction until these things are done. 16-1, people with that kind of courage people are going to come after people with that kind of courage. So we, as a different kind of Democrat, need to be able to protect the people that are going to look out for us. We're going to support and protect the people, the good, courageous people that want to look out for us. We got some good elected officials that want to do the right thing, but if they do the right thing, the hammer's going to come down on them. So we also not only want to be able to lay the hammer down on the people that work against our interests, we want to be able to support the people that work for our interests.
And so Emmanuel Bussie is there not only to push people like me and other elected officials and make sure we keep our word, but to also, give us some comfort and some support when we are doing things that people, that we have said and we need to address. Well, listen, Emmanuel, we have run out of time. Thank you for joining us. It does go quick. I hope you come back in the future.
Absolutely.
All right, so everybody listen, join me next Tuesday here at WWDB AM 860 for another In the Know with David O. And if you want to check out our shows, go to the website, WWDB 860 AM. You can Google it and hear all the recorded shows. Thank you.